Your soul is where your life takes place. The soul is what will bring it into our lives. The famous televangelist Creflo Dollar is all anyone can talk about right now, but not for the reasons you might think. A lot of bad things have been said about him in the news, and his church, the World Changers Church International, is now at the center of a total scandal. There have been claims that make people question everything. His honesty, guidance, and the fact that we may not have known him at all. We're going to get into all the juicy information in this video. The shocking event that set everything off, you'll want to watch it all the way through, so get some popcorn. What does Creflo Dollar do? It was Creflo Augustus Dollar Jr. born in College Park, Georgia on January 28, 1962, is one of the most talked about people in televangelism these days. His name has probably come up in conversations about religion or even money, right? What does he do? He started and is the senior leader of the non-denominational Christian church World Changers Church International WCCI, which is based in College Park, which is almost in Atlanta. How this man went from starting a small church in a school cafeteria is what's really interesting, to making it one of the most powerful Christian powers in the US and around the world. Let's go back in time for a moment and talk about how everything began. When Dollar opened the World Changers Ministries Christian Center in 1986, it was the official start of his preaching career. And guess what? It was his first time going to church. There were only 8 people there, and it was held in the hall of Kathleen Mitchell Elementary School. But here's the thing. It's possible for a small step like that to lead to big things when someone feels called to do something. Dollar thought so for sure. Fans and friends of Pastor Creflo Dollar are shocked by the sad news that just came out. What does this mean for his job that he has spent his whole life doing? We're going to get into the important details, and you won't want to miss a moment of this story. Follow us to the end, as this news has effects that go beyond what you might expect and touch on more profound ideas of strength and faith. The church quickly grew over the next few years. Before anyone could blink, Dollar changed the name of the church to World Changers Church International WCCI and moved the congregation to a chapel because more and more people wanted to hear his lessons. After that, a big step forward came. It was Christmas Eve, December 24, 1995, when WCCI moved into the World Dome, a building with 8,500 seats that is now their home. It wasn't just any building either. The church said they built it without any bank loans, even though it cost almost $20 million. That's right, the members pay for everything. This shows how much faith people had in Dollar's idea. By 2007, there were about 30,000 people attending the church. It looks like a small town. What about the money side of things? WCCI said they got a total of $70 million in cash in 2006. Dollar had an impact on more than just his church, though. His TV show, Changing Your World, is seen in almost 1 billion homes around the world. His messages that are heard all over the world have given him a huge stage that most ministers could only dream of. Dollar is well known for his strong support of the prosperity gospel. You may have heard of this. That teaching tells people who believe it that God offers them wealth and success in this life. You can get those gifts if you do certain things like giving a lot to ministries. Dollar has been a strong supporter of this message and has written many books about it, one of which is called Love, the Life-Changing Power. The book is mostly about how God's love can change your life and help you reach your goals, both in and out of money. So it's not a surprise that a lot of his lectures are about how to get out of money problems by following biblical advice. Everyone wants to know how to deal with money issues, right? But of course, a lot of power often comes a lot of trouble. People have said bad things about Dollar over the years, especially after people saw how well off he was living. A private jet, high-end homes, and Rolls Royces are on the table. A lot of people didn't understand it. Should a Christian man live like this? Things got even worse in 2007 when the US government looked into 6 televangelism groups, including Dollar's ministry. Senator Chuck Grassley is in charge of the Senate Finance Committee. The review looked into whether these ministries were abusing the fact that they were not required to pay taxes. Dollar wouldn't have it, though. He didn't back down. He said that the IRS, not the Senate, should be looking into religious groups. When the investigation was over in 2011, no one was charged, but it did make people look twice. After that, there were the more private trouble spots. Dollar was in the news in 2012 when he was arrested for reportedly hitting one of his daughters. People couldn't stop talking about how shocking it was. He had to go to anger management classes, but the charges against him were dropped the next year. That wasn't enough to stir things up in 2022. Dollar dropped a bombshell when he officially changed what he had taught for a long time about tithing. Yes, he told everyone all of a sudden that he was wrong after years of telling them that they needed to tithe. Dollar says that tithing is not required by the Bible, but is a choice that each person makes. That's an interesting turn of events. A lot of people were confused and wondered what else might change about the way he taught. Creflo Dollar's life and work are full of moments that both amaze and raise eyebrows. Do you like or dislike him? No doubt about it, he has had a big impact on current Christian ministry. It's very sad to say that Pastor Creflo Dollar has received terrible news. What is it that has put this well-known priest in such a tough spot? You won't want to miss this important update because it will tell you how his ministry is different and how his followers are responding. Stay until the end because this news will make you feel very sad. What is said to have happened? In the early hours of a calm Friday morning, something scary happened at Pastor Creflo Dollar's house in Fayette County, Georgia. It shocked his family and people in other places. Do you ever think about being 15 years old and being so stressed out that you call 911 on your parent? That's what Pastor Dollar's daughter did around 1 a.m., saying she didn't feel safe in her own house. She said that a fight she had with her dad had turned into something much worse and more physical. Also, what was the fight about? A party. Like a lot of fights between teens and their parents, this one quickly got out of hand. The daughter's story was scary. She said that when her dad wouldn't let her go to a party, things quickly got heated and the fight broke out. She said Pastor Dollar did more than just yell at her. She said he hurt her physically. The things she said made the events sound very upsetting. Her father was said to have rushed at her, put his hands around her throat, and even punched her. She said that he hit her with his shoe at one point. When the cops arrived, they saw a scratch on her neck that seemed to back up what she said. Even though it wasn't a big mark, the police had to write it down as part of their probe. In the end, this small piece of proof would cause a fight, but at that time, the police had enough evidence to arrest Pastor Dollar on charges of simple battery, domestic violence, and child abuse. Things get more interesting now. Dollar denied getting the scratch, saying it was caused by a skin problem that had been there for a long time and not by their fight. Who then told the truth? The situation was already tricky, but Dollar's older daughter, Alexandria, was also very important to what was going on. At first, Alexandria believed what her younger sister said and told the cops that she saw her father choke the 15-year-old for a few seconds. She said she saw him grab her sister by the shoulders, hit her, and then throw her to the ground when she tried to run away. Alexandria went so far as to say that their mother, Taffy Dollar, had to step in and prevent the fight. But this is where the story gets more complicated. When Alexandria was asked to write something, her story changed all of a sudden. When Alexandria first wrote about what happened, her story started to sound more like her dad's than like her sister's. Why did you change? On the police report, it said that Alexandria's parents were in the room with her while she wrote her first statement. Could the stress of living close to her parents have affected her? It does make you wonder, doesn't it? Later, Alexandria was asked to write a second statement, but this time she didn't have her parents watching her, and her story went back to the first one, which again supported her younger sister's claims. Her back-and-forth comments made a situation that was already tough even more complicated. It's not a surprise that something like this made a big fuss, both in Pastor Dollar's church and in the Christian community as a whole. How often do you hear that a well-known faith leader is being accused of something so serious? It led to conversations about who is responsible and how hard it is to handle domestic disagreements, especially when they involve well-known people like Pastor Dollar. And of course, it made people wonder how a spiritual leader can match their public image with their real life. It became clear as the news spread that this wasn't just a problem for one family. It was about how religion, leadership, and family relationships can get complicated. As everyone knows, fights happen at home. But what happens when those fights get physical and happen in public? Things that happened made us wonder what really happens behind closed doors, even in the homes of people we look up to. Many people were confused by what happened after the event. Where do we draw the line between personal responsibility and public image? This is especially important in a world where people hold faith leaders more accountable. Pastor Dollar's account of what happened. Many people were shocked by the accusations, so Pastor Creflo Dollar told his own story of what happened that terrible night. The way he told the story was very different from what his daughter said did happen, and at first got help from her bigger sister. You know that fights in the family can get hot sometimes, right? Well, Dollar says that's exactly what took place. Just a fight in the family that got out of hand. Not more and not less. Pastor Dollar said that the problem began with an intense talk between him and his youngest daughter. He agreed that there was a disagreement. First, he told her she couldn't go to the party, which, let's be honest, probably didn't make her very happy as a teenager. But he made it clear that things got worse because of the emotional back and forth, not because of any physical abuse. In his own words, Dollar said, "The truth is that a family conversation with our youngest daughter got emotional. This was a big part of his defense. He turned the whole thing into a heated but harmless exchange, not a fight that got physical." Have you ever had a family argument where feelings are running high but words are flying around? To paint that picture, Dollar wrote this. Now, when it came to the serious claims of physical abuse, Pastor Dollar didn't hold back when he denied them. He strongly denied the claims that he hit, choked, or slammed his daughter. He instead said that when she hit him, he stopped her, which is something any parent would do in a tough situation. He even said he hit her and wrestled her to the ground, which is still okay with some parents, even though it's seen as bad these days. He said, "I should have never been arrested," in a sermon he gave a few days after being taken. That's a bold claim, right? Dollar was sure that he had been wrongfully arrested, and he hinted that there was something bigger going on. He said that the devil was behind it all and was trying to hurt his image and, by extension, his ministry. Dollar knew what to do about the physical proof, the neck marks that the deputies saw when he arrived at the scene of the crime. He didn't say there wasn't something on his daughter's neck, but he said it wasn't because he had touched her. He said the marks were caused by an old skin problem that his daughter had been having for a long time before the fight. Dollar said that the only thing on her neck was a scratch from acne. Dollar kept saying that everything was fine in his home throughout the whole incident. He told his congregation, and maybe even himself, all is well in the Dollar household. He talked about how much he loved his kids and how his job as a dad was to set limits and build them up in the best way possible. Besides that, he said he wasn't mad at his daughter for calling the cops. Could this have been a moment of grace, or was he just trying to look good? In any case, he seemed eager to tell everyone that family is most important, even though there was a lot of trouble going on around them. What's even more interesting is how Pastor Dollar put it all together. This wasn't just an attack on his person, it was an attack on his faith. He told the people in the church, "You will be shocked when the facts come out." The people who followed him were waiting for those facts. What did that mean for the case, though? Dollar thought that the whole thing was an attempt to make his message of kindness look bad. He said it wasn't so much against me as it was against this word of grace. He thought that the devil was attacking the messenger to try to stop the word. That's a pretty strong claim, right? How do you feel about the claims being a part of a bigger spiritual battle, or just a fight in the family that went badly? As the story went on, it became clear that Pastor Dollar and his daughter's different versions didn't really answer any questions. It wasn't just what tonight's events meant. It was also about Dollar, his family, and his mission. People started to wonder how famous families, especially religious families, deal with fights between their members. What happens when these fights become public? Dollar didn't back down for now, denying they did anything wrong and saying they were sure the truth would come out in the end. Though it was still unclear whether his account of what happened would hold up in a court of law or just in the eyes of the public. Just now, terrible news about Creflo Dollars was shared. What could have had such a big effect on this important pastor? The facts that are coming out make it clear what problems he now has to deal with. We're here to help you through it all. Stay until the end, because the more you know about this news, the more you'll understand his journey. The lesson on giving tithes. Creflo Dollar has spent years teaching his community how important it is to tithe, that is, giving 10% of your income to the church. He has made the point that this is not only a good thing to do, it's also required by the Bible. For years, people believed it. He put together books, tapes, and videos with his lessons on tithing. So much so that his name almost became a word for the prosperity gospel and the idea that giving 10% of your income would bring you wealth. Now, though, he's saying that he was wrong the whole time, and that tithing is not biblical for Christians today, right? Let's look at what took place. He suddenly admitted that he had been teaching the wrong message for years while he was in the middle of a Sunday service. Not just any message, he's saying that the most important thing he's built his ministry around is no longer valid according to what the New Testament says. His speech was called The Great Misunderstanding, which was a perfect title. The verse 14 in Romans 6 helped him explain why he's now changing his mind. You are not under the law, but under grace, so sin will not have power over you. To put it another way, Christians today live by grace, not by the Old Testament's rules. And he says that tithing is part of those old rules. This is very important because tithing has always been taught as something Christians had to do because it was in the Bible and was their duty to God. Dollar, however, says that's not the case. He's telling them, look, you don't have to tithe that way anymore. The Old Testament gives us the idea that we have to give 10%, but under the new covenant of grace, we don't have to. He even told his church members to get rid of all the books, tapes, and movies he made about it. You know how much stuff that is? He's been telling people this for many years. It is huge for someone to then tell them to forget everything they have been telling them about this subject. This is such a big change for him. The fact that he's saying he was wrong isn't what's making a fuss, it's how many people this means. Take a look. Millions of people have been listening to him for years and giving their 10% every month because they thought that was what God wanted, because that's what he taught them. People put their faith in him and gave money based on what he said, and now he's saying, oops, that was a misunderstanding. People have been very upset. Some people are happy, saying things like, finally, I've been having trouble with the idea of tithing. Now, one of the biggest supporters says it's not needed, which is great. On the other hand, there are a lot of people who are upset, confused, or even angry. They gave thousands of dollars, maybe even more, because they thought it would help them. Finally, they were told that what the Bible said wasn't necessary after all. Also, this isn't just a private matter, it's open to everyone. He told the truth on camera, which everyone can see. Now, Christians in general, especially those who don't like prosperity speakers, are speaking out. Some people think it's about time he accepted it, while others wonder if this is just a way for him to change his message for a new era. So keep up with the times by making things interesting. Okay, so he's not saying people should stop giving altogether. That was made clear. He said in his confession that being kind is still important, even though tithing isn't needed. He's just saying it now as an act of grace, something you do from the heart instead of because the Old Testament says you have to. It's interesting to see how this fits into his bigger message of kindness. His change makes it look like he's trying to fit in better with the idea of grace over law in the New Testament. He's saying that people shouldn't feel like they have to give a certain amount. Instead, they should give out of love. You should give because you want to, not because you believe God will be mad at you if you don't. Big things are happening because of this, especially for preachers and organizations that base their message on tithing as well. Dollar doesn't just teach. He's one of the most well-known people in the prosperity gospel movement. When someone like him confesses in this way, it makes other people in the same place think again about what they teach. Perhaps some are rushing to think of how they can talk about it with their own groups. You could say that this is starting a bigger conversation in Christianity about money, giving, and the prosperity gospel in general. Church's response to the accusations against Pastor Creflo Dollar caused a range of feelings in the Christian community and at World Changers Church International, making everyone talk about what really happened. People were shocked. Some didn't know what to think, while others were sure they were right by his side. It was, to say the least, tense all around. Of course, everyone was watching the church to see what they would do. What would they say? Would they fully back it, or would there be a pause, maybe even some doubt? It would be interesting to see how both his loyal fans and his enemies reacted. Then, what did Pastor Dollar do? He wasn't afraid of being in the spotlight, though. He even went right into it. He talked about the big problem that was there not long after what happened at a Sunday service. He was aware that everyone was eager to hear his side of the story. All eyes were on Dollar, both inside and outside of church. He didn't waste any time rejecting the more serious accusations. He made it very clear that he didn't hit or choke his daughter like was said. He thought that everything had been blown out of control. He told those who followed him that what was being said wasn't really what happened. But here's the thing. Did that answer everyone's questions, or did it bring up new ones? He also went one step further. Dollar said in his speech that he should never have been caught in the first place. Really? That's a strong claim, right? He didn't just say that the accusations were false, he put the whole thing in the context of something much bigger. He thought this wasn't just a family fight gone wrong. It was a full-on mental attack. Dollar told the people in his church that this was the devil trying to look bad for him and hurt his mission. And let's be honest, if you say the devil is trying to get me, your Christian friends will pay close attention. He probably thought, of course, this is an attack on our pastor and our faith on the other hand. Critics likely saw this as an attempt to hide what really happened. Could you picture yourself in that service? They must have agreed with each other, thinking that this was just an enemy test, while others may have thought that something wasn't quite right. The word from Pastor Dollar was still very clear. He wasn't giving up. In his painting, he showed a man who was being attacked spiritually and who had been wrongly charged by forces that we can't see. Many of his fans liked this way of thinking. They probably thought this wasn't just a scandal, but part of a bigger battle between good and evil in the universe. But do you think everyone was sure? Or did even his most devoted followers still have doubts? On the one hand, he wants to clear his name in front of everyone, but he's also making it sound like it's part of a bigger fight. And you know, people tend to support their leaders even more when things are bad. That their pastor might be under attack by spiritual forces made many people want to protect him even more. But for people who weren't there, this might have seemed like an attempt to change the subject from what really happened. No matter what, his speech was a big deal, inside and outside of church. Should they keep supporting him, or would it be smarter to wait until they had all the facts before coming to his aid? In the middle of all this, the church leaders made a public statement. It was clear that World Changers Church International was still dedicated to their goal, which was to spread grace and build a loving community. The sentence was like walking a wire. On the one hand, it showed that they would always stand by Pastor Dollar as their spiritual leader. On the other hand, it did say that the accusations were serious. They told their members to wait for the court process to finish and not make hasty decisions based on rumors or information that was not complete. And isn't that the task all the time? How do you keep your trust in someone while also being responsible enough to take charges seriously? In line with what the church teaches about grace and forgiveness, the message wasn't just for people who support the dollar. It also asked people to understand and care about everyone involved in the situation. The message was clear: no matter how sure you were that dollar was innocent or how doubtful you were, even when things were bad, redemption and healing were possible. But how easy is it to show kindness to someone who is powerful? For many, the church's official reaction made them wonder even more about the problems religious groups face when their leader is under fire. Not only did they want to help Pastor Dollar, it was also about how honest the church was as a whole. Could they keep their members' trust while also making sure they were open and responsible? Any group would find this hard to handle, let alone a church whose main beliefs are love, forgiveness, and kindness. It wasn't easy for them to find the right balance between supporting their pastor and talking about the major problems that the incident caused. As the court case went on, World Changers Church International was at a loss for what to do. In the face of such a storm, would they be able to stick to their purpose and values? How could they keep the congregation's faith and trust if they didn't play down the problem? Time would tell. But there was one thing that was sure. The path ahead was full of questions, problems, and most importantly, the church's duty to stick to its values of kindness and forgiveness. This is the end of the movie. Thanks for seeing. If you like this video, please like, comment, and subscribe to get more. Click on the movie that comes up next to read more exciting stories.